The Emperor Who Woke Before Dawn. Part 1. The Silence Before Rome Awoke. Long before the streets of Rome filled with merchants, soldiers, politicians, and citizens, before the sound of horse hooves echoed across stone roads, before the markets opened and thousands of voices merged into a single restless hum, there was silence, a rare and precious silence, the kind of silence that most people never notice. The kind that exists only for a brief moment before the world begins demanding something from you. And every morning, while most of Rome still slept beneath the darkness of the fading night, one man was already awake. Not because he had to be, not because someone ordered him to, but because he understood something most people never learn. If you do not take control of your mind before the world wakes up, the world will take control of it for you. The man's name was Marcus Aurelius. History remembers him as an emperor, a ruler, a commander of armies, the most powerful man in the Roman Empire. Yet if you could have seen him in those quiet hours before sunrise, you might have been surprised. Because he did not begin his mornings like a conqueror. He began them like a student. Imagine him now, the city still sleeping beyond the palace walls, the sky painted in deep shades of blue and black, the air cool and still. A single oil lamp flickering softly beside a wooden desk. No servants, no senators, no crowds, no applause. Just Marcus, alone with his thoughts. This was the moment he valued most. Not the public speeches, not the military victories, not the ceremonies that celebrated his power. The silence, because Marcus knew that every day would bring challenges. Difficult people, unexpected problems, criticism, disappointment, pressure, responsibility. And if his mind was unprepared, these things would control him. But if his mind was ready, they would simply become part of the path. This is what makes Marcus Aurelius so relevant today. Because although nearly 2,000 years have passed, our struggles have not changed as much as we think. We may no longer live in ancient Rome. We carry smartphones instead of scrolls. We drive cars instead of riding horses. We communicate instantly across continents. Yet the human mind faces many of the same battles. We still worry about the future. We still become angry when people disrespect us. We still fear failure. We still compare ourselves to others. We still lose sleep over things we cannot control. The technology has changed. Human nature has not. And that is why the lessons Marcus discovered before dawn continue to speak to us today. Imagine for a moment that you wake tomorrow morning. Before checking your phone. Before reading messages. Before looking at the news, before opening social media, you simply sit in silence. No distractions, no notifications, no noise, just your thoughts. For many people, this feels uncomfortable, almost frightening, because silence reveals things. It reveals worries. It reveals fears. It reveals unresolved emotions we have been avoiding. This is why many people rush toward distraction the moment they wake up. The phone becomes a shield. Entertainment becomes an escape. Busyness becomes a form of avoidance. Marcus Aurelius understood this tendency long before smartphones existed. He knew the human mind naturally drifts toward distraction, and that is precisely why he trained himself to sit with reality instead. Each morning, he reminded himself of truths most people prefer not to think about. Life is uncertain. People will disappoint you. Plans will change. You may fail. You may suffer. You may lose things you love. At first glance, this sounds pessimistic. But Marcus was not preparing for misery. He was preparing for freedom. Because when you accept reality before it arrives, reality loses much of its power to shock you. Think about how much suffering comes from surprise. You expect everyone to be reasonable. Then someone behaves selfishly. You expect life to follow your plans. Then circumstances change. You expect success to arrive quickly. Then progress takes longer than imagined. Suddenly frustration appears. Anger appears. Anxiety appears. Not because reality changed, but because reality failed to match expectation. Marcus sought to remove this trap. Each morning, he prepared himself for the nature of life itself. He reminded himself, today I will meet difficult people. Today I may face obstacles. Today things may not go as planned. And because he expected these things, he remained calmer when they arrived. This was not negativity. It was wisdom. Modern culture often teaches us to expect perfection. Perfect careers, perfect relationships, perfect health, perfect outcomes. But reality has never offered such guarantees. Marcus understood this, and because he understood it, he was less disturbed when life behaved like life. As dawn slowly approached and light began touching the horizon, the emperor continued reflecting, not on how to gain more power, not on how to impress others, but on a much deeper question. How should I live today? This question guided everything. Because Marcus believed success without character was meaningless. Wealth without wisdom was dangerous. Power without self-control was destructive. The true battle was never outside. It was within. And every morning before Rome awoke, he prepared for that battle. Not with armor, not with swords, but with awareness. Because the strongest empire he would ever rule was not Rome. It was his own mind. And perhaps that same lesson matters now more than ever. Because we live in a world overflowing with information but starving for reflection. A world obsessed with achievement but often disconnected from purpose. A world where many people know how to manage businesses, careers, and technology, but struggle to manage their own thoughts. Marcus Aurelius would remind us that before leading anything else, you must learn to lead yourself. And that journey begins in the same place it began for him. In silence, before the world wakes up, before distractions arrive, before responsibilities begin, in the quiet moments when you are alone with your own mind. Because what you do in those moments may determine the quality of everything that follows. And that is where our story truly begins. The Emperor Who Woke Before Dawn. Part 2. The Battle Inside the Emperor's Mind. As the first rays of sunlight began to touch the rooftops of Rome, the city slowly awakened. Merchants prepared their stalls. Soldiers gathered for duty. Servants hurried through palace corridors. Messengers carried news from distant provinces. The machinery of an empire was beginning to move. Yet inside the emperor's chamber, another battle was already taking place. A battle invisible to everyone around him. A battle with no swords, no armies, no bloodshed. And yet it was the most important battle Marcus Aurelius would ever fight. The battle against himself. Most people imagine power as the ability to command others, to influence events, to control circumstances, to make the world obey your wishes. Marcus Aurelius knew better, because he had spent enough years observing human nature to understand a profound truth. A person who cannot govern their own mind can never truly govern anything else. This lesson became increasingly clear as he grew older. When Marcus was young, he believed that wisdom would arrive naturally with age. Many people believe this. They assume time itself creates maturity. But Marcus discovered that years alone teach nothing. A person can grow older without becoming wiser. A person can accumulate wealth without finding peace. A person can achieve success while remaining a prisoner of fear. True growth required something far more difficult. Self-examination. Every morning before facing the demands of the empire, Marcus examined his own thoughts. Not because he was perfect, but because he wasn't. This is something many people misunderstand about Stoicism. The Stoics were not superhuman. They did not float above emotions. They did not eliminate fear. They did not become immune to frustration. In fact, Marcus often struggled with the same emotions that trouble people today. Doubt, impatience, anxiety, exhaustion, loneliness. The difference was not that he avoided these experiences. The difference was that he observed them. He refused to let them take control without first questioning them. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and treating your thoughts the way a wise judge examines evidence. Instead of immediately believing every fear, you pause. Instead of obeying every emotion, you investigate. Instead of reacting automatically, you become curious. Marcus practiced this daily because he understood something dangerous about the human mind. Not every thought tells the truth. A worried mind predicts disasters that never happen. An angry mind exaggerates offenses. An insecure mind invents comparisons. A fearful mind creates enemies where none exist. And if you never question these thoughts, they begin controlling your life. This is why Marcus believed awareness was a form of freedom. The moment you become aware of a thought, you create space between yourself and it. You are no longer trapped inside it. You can choose. And choice is where freedom begins. As emperor, Marcus faced pressures most people can barely imagine. Every decision affected thousands of lives, sometimes millions. A military campaign could determine the future of entire regions. A political mistake could create instability throughout the empire. Disease could spread. Borders could be threatened. Resources could become scarce. Every day brought uncertainty. Yet despite carrying enormous responsibilities, Marcus repeatedly returned to one simple principle. Focus on what is within your control. Today this advice sounds almost too simple, but simplicity does not make it less powerful. Think about your own life. How much time do people spend worrying about things they cannot control? The opinions of strangers, future events, past mistakes, economic conditions, unexpected outcomes, the behavior of other people. Hours, days, years. Entire lives are consumed by these worries. Marcus saw this clearly. He realized that every moment spent fighting reality was a moment stolen from living wisely. This did not mean ignoring problems. Far from it. Marcus faced his responsibilities directly, but he distinguished between action and obsession. Action is useful. Obsession is exhausting. Action focuses on what can be done. Obsession fixates on what cannot be changed. The Stoic path always returned to the same question. What is mine to do right now? Not next year. Not next month. Not after circumstances improve. Right now? This question grounded Marcus whenever anxiety threatened to overwhelm him. And perhaps it can do the same for us. Because modern life often encourages the opposite. People are constantly pulled into future worries. What if I fail? What if things get worse? What if I lose what I have? What if I am not enough? The mind races ahead into imaginary futures. Meanwhile, the present moment is abandoned. Marcus would remind us that the future has not arrived. The only place we can act is here. The only place we can choose is now. The only place we can practice wisdom is today. As the morning continued, Marcus often reflected on another difficult truth. Human beings are remarkably skilled at making themselves unhappy. Not because life is always harsh, but because the mind often creates suffering beyond what reality requires. A delay becomes a catastrophe. A criticism becomes an identity. A mistake becomes proof of worthlessness. A setback becomes evidence that everything is doomed. The event itself may be small, but the story we tell ourselves transforms it into something enormous. Marcus noticed this tendency within himself, and because he noticed it, he challenged it. Whenever his mind drifted toward unnecessary suffering, he would ask, "Is this truly as terrible as it seems?" Often the answer was no. The problem remained, but the emotional storm surrounding it began to shrink. This is one of Stoicism's most practical lessons. Events matter, but our interpretation often matters even more. Two people can face the same challenge. One collapses, the other grows stronger. The external circumstance is identical. The difference lies within. Marcus understood this deeply, and that understanding gave him a kind of strength that could not be granted by power, wealth, or status. Because external success is fragile. Empires rise and fall. Money appears and disappears. Reputations change. Fortunes shift. But the ability to govern your own mind remains valuable under every circumstance. This is why Marcus spent so much time cultivating his inner world. He knew that one day everything external would vanish. His title, his possessions, his achievements, even his life. What would remain was the quality of his character. And so each morning became an opportunity. An opportunity not merely to manage an empire, but to shape the person managing it. This is the hidden lesson of Marcus Aurelius. The lesson that transcends centuries. Every day presents two battles. The external battle and the internal battle. Most people focus entirely on the first. The Stoics focused first on the second, because they knew something extraordinary. When you win the internal battle, the external ones become easier to face. Not because life becomes simpler, but because you become stronger. The traffic jam remains. The difficult conversation remains. The uncertainty remains. The challenges remain, but your relationship with them changes. And when your relationship with difficulty changes, your entire experience of life changes. As the city of Rome fully awakened around him, Marcus rose from his seat. The day's responsibilities awaited. Meetings, decisions, conflicts, unexpected problems, the endless demands of leadership. Yet he stepped into them differently than most people would. Not because he expected the day to be easy, but because he had already prepared his mind. The world could bring whatever it wished. Praise or criticism, success or failure. comfort, or hardship. He could not control those things, but he could control how he met them. And perhaps that is the true secret of the emperor who woke before dawn. His greatest victory was never over foreign armies. It was never over political rivals. It was never over distant enemies. His greatest victory was achieved each morning, in silence, before anyone was watching, before anyone knew. The quiet victory of mastering his own mind. And in the end, that is the victory available to all of us. No matter who we are, no matter where we live, no matter what challenges we face. For every sunrise offers the same invitation, to stop being ruled by our thoughts and begin ruling them with wisdom instead. The Emperor Who Woke Before Dawn. Part 3. Why Marcus Aurelius Expected Difficult People. Before the sun fully rose above the horizon of Rome, Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of something unusual, something most people would never place on a morning checklist. He would quietly prepare himself to meet difficult people, not friendly people, not supportive people, not people who would make his day easier. Difficult people, people who would be selfish, people who would be impatient, people who would be dishonest, people who would be arrogant, people who would criticize him unfairly, people who would misunderstand his intentions. And surprisingly, this expectation did not make him bitter. It made him peaceful. At first glance, this seems strange. After all, most modern advice encourages positive thinking. People are told to expect the best, to imagine ideal outcomes, to visualize perfect days. But Marcus understood a weakness hidden within unrealistic optimism. When we expect perfection, reality becomes our enemy. And reality has never been perfect. Think about your own life. How often does frustration come from reality itself? And how often does it come from violated expectations? You expect respect. Someone insults you. You expect appreciation. Someone ignores your effort. You expect honesty. Someone lies. You expect kindness. Someone behaves selfishly. The pain often comes not from the event itself, but from the shock that it happened. The mind says, this should not be happening. But Marcus trained himself differently. Before entering the world each day, he reminded himself, this is exactly the kind of thing that may happen. And because he expected human imperfection, he was less disturbed by it. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of Stoicism. The Stoics were not pessimists. They were realists. They did not expect the worst because they enjoyed negativity. They prepared for difficulty because they understood human nature. Marcus ruled an empire. He dealt with politicians seeking power, military leaders seeking influence, citizens demanding solutions, foreign enemies threatening borders, advisors with conflicting agendas. Every day he encountered people driven by fear, greed, ambition, insecurity, and pride. Yet instead of becoming cynical, he developed understanding. Because Marcus recognized something important. People often act badly because they are confused, not because they are evil. They pursue what they believe will benefit them, even when they are mistaken, even when they cause harm, even when their actions create suffering. Marcus believed ignorance often sat behind destructive behavior. This perspective changed everything. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. Immediately, anger appears. The mind creates a story. They are disrespectful. They think they're better than everyone. They ruin my morning. But what if they are rushing to a hospital? What if they are carrying a burden you cannot see? What if they are simply having a terrible day? The point is not to excuse bad behavior. The point is to recognize how little we actually know. And when we stop assuming the worst about people, anger loses some of its fuel. Marcus practiced this constantly, because he knew that resentment was a prison. Every minute spent carrying anger became a minute lost from living wisely. This does not mean Marcus allowed people to walk over him. Another common misunderstanding about Stoicism is the idea that it teaches passivity. It does not. Marcus could be firm. He could make difficult decisions. He could hold people accountable. He could enforce consequences when necessary. But he sought to do these things without hatred, without bitterness, without allowing another person's behavior to corrupt his own character. This is an important distinction. Many people believe strength requires aggression. Marcus believed strength required self-control. Anyone can explode in anger. Anyone can retaliate. Anyone can react impulsively. But remaining calm when provoked? That requires discipline. That requires mastery. That requires wisdom. The Stoics often compared life to a stage play. You do not choose every actor who appears in your scene. You do not control every line spoken by others. You do not determine every challenge placed before you. But you do control how you perform your role. And Marcus took that responsibility seriously. When confronted by difficult people, he repeatedly asked himself, what kind of person do I want to be in response to this? Notice the focus. Not, how do I change them? Not, how do I make them understand? Not, how do I force them to behave differently? Instead, how do I remain true to my principles? This is where modern life often traps us. People become obsessed with controlling others, convincing them, correcting them, winning arguments, changing opinions. And when those efforts fail, frustration grows. Marcus would remind us that another person's mind belongs to them, just as yours belongs to you. Your responsibility is not to control their character. Your responsibility is to protect your own. This lesson becomes even more important in today's world. A world where outrage spreads instantly, where strangers argue endlessly online, where people feel pressured to react to every controversy, every criticism, every disagreement, every offense. The result? Exhaustion, mental fatigue, emotional burnout. Marcus would likely ask a simple question. Is this worth sacrificing your peace for? Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every criticism deserves a response. Not every insult deserves your attention. Sometimes the strongest response is restraint. Sometimes the wisest action is silence. Sometimes the greatest victory is refusing to become what provoked you. This does not mean becoming indifferent to justice. Marcus cared deeply about justice, but he understood that justice pursued through rage often creates more harm. Wisdom must guide action. Otherwise, emotion becomes the leader, and emotions make poor rulers. As the years passed, Marcus witnessed countless examples of this truth. People destroying relationships because of pride, leaders making terrible decisions because of anger, families divided by resentment, friends separated by ego. Again and again, he saw how uncontrolled emotions created unnecessary suffering. And again, he returned to the same conclusion. The real challenge is not difficult people. The real challenge is what difficult people awaken inside us. Because the rude person does not create your anger. They reveal it. The arrogant person does not create your impatience. They expose it. The dishonest person does not create your frustration. They bring it to the surface. In this way, difficult people become unexpected teachers. They reveal areas where growth is still needed. This is why Marcus treated challenges as opportunities for practice. Patience cannot develop without irritation. Compassion cannot develop without difficult people. Self-control cannot develop without temptation. Courage cannot develop without fear. Every virtue requires resistance. Just as muscles grow through strain, character grows through challenge. The Stoics understood this deeply. And because they understood it, they stopped viewing every difficulty as an enemy. Some difficulties became training. Some frustrations became lessons. Some obstacles became opportunities. This mindset transformed the way Marcus experienced life. The same events occurred. The same difficult people existed. The same problems appeared. But his perspective changed. And perspective changes everything. As another morning unfolded across Rome, Marcus prepared to leave his private chamber. Soon he would face senators, generals, advisors, and citizens. Some would agree with him. Others would oppose him. Some would praise him. Others would criticize him. Some would be reasonable. Others would not. Yet none of this determined his peace. Because his peace no longer depended on their behavior. It depended on his own character. And that is why he woke before dawn. Not merely to prepare for the world, but to prepare for the people within it. Because he knew something that remains true thousands of years later. You cannot always choose the people you encounter, but you can always choose the person you become when you encounter them. And that choice, repeated day after day, becomes the foundation of a calm and unshakable life. For the greatest test of wisdom is not found in silence and solitude. It is found in the presence of other human beings. And every difficult person offers an opportunity to practice the very virtues we claim to value. That was Marcus Aurelius' secret. He did not expect people to be perfect. He expected people to be human. And because of that, he remained calmer than most. Not because life was easier, but because his expectations were wiser.